She was dismissed at 4 o'clock, and you are not to fetch her, his mother said. I have had her box put on the carrier's cart, and I have not given her a character. Sebastian stood in the doorway of the yellow drawing-room with the London dust still on his boots, and heard the clock on the chimney-piece tick 11 times before he trusted himself to speak. You dismissed my ward's governess, he said, on the day I was on the road without telling me, and you did not give her a character. She is a curate's widow with £9 a year and a name nobody has heard of, and she has been in this house 4 months, and the children are besotted with her. The Dowager Duchess of Aldworth arranged her shawl. Which is the point, Sebastian. Do try to attend. There was talk of her at her last place. Mrs. Cathcart wrote that she left the Fenley house under a cloud. I will not have a person of that kind hanging about my son's nursery and my son's library, and reading to my son in the evenings, and being pretty at him over the tea things. It was becoming noticed. Noticed by whom? By me, said his mother. Sebastian turned and went out. He had been Duke of Aldworth for 6 years, and for 2 of them he had been guardian to his sister's 2 children, and he understood a good deal about drainage and rents, and nothing whatever about what he found waiting for him at the top of the nursery stair at 11:30 that night. They were both sitting on the top step in their night-clothes, Tobias, who was 8 and grave, and Pippa, who was 5 and was holding the hairbrush. You are meant to be asleep, Sebastian said. Nurse says Mrs. Locksley is not coming back, Tobias said. Is that true? There was a way to answer such a question, and Sebastian did not know it. He sat down on the step below them, which put him at the right height, and said, My mother sent her away this afternoon while I was in London. Pippa began to cry, without any noise at all, which was somehow far worse than the other kind. She does the brush, Tobias said, in a flat, reasonable voice, holding out the hairbrush as though it were evidence at law, which in a sense it was. Pippa will not have it done by nurse because nurse is quick and it hurts. Mrs. Locksley does it in 3 parts and tells about the fox in the churchyard while she does it. She has told 41 nights of the fox. He swallowed. Also she knows I cannot read the long words and she does not tell anyone. She lets me say them wrong first, and then she says them right after, as if she were only saying them and not correcting. I did not know that. Nobody knows it, that is the arrangement. Tobias's chin was going. He was his mother's child, and Sebastian's sister had had the same chin and had used it in exactly the same way. Uncle, do we get to say, about who is in this house? Sebastian sat on his own nursery stair at 25 minutes to midnight and looked at a hairbrush. Say it, he said. We choose her, said Tobias. Pippa held out something in her closed hand and opened it. A hair ribbon, a length of narrow green silk, crumpled from the fist. She was pinning it and Grandmama came, she said. Sebastian took the ribbon. He went down to the library and rang, and got his valet and his butler and his housekeeper out of their beds, and by midnight he had the shape of it. Mrs. Locksley had been called into the yellow drawing-room at 4. She had been out again in 11 minutes. She had gone up, packed 1 box, been down in a quarter of an hour, and had asked one favor of the housekeeper, which was to be allowed to go up once more and say good-bye to the children, and had been told by the dowager's own maid, standing at the foot of the stair, that it would not be permitted, as scenes were bad for the young. She had not made a scene. She had written something at the hall table, given the housekeeper 6pence for the under-housemaid whose mother was ill, and walked out to the carrier's cart at 4:30 with her box. Where is what she wrote? Sebastian said. His housekeeper, a woman of iron who had served his father, and had never in 19 years shown him anything but a smooth face, put a folded paper on the desk, and then stood there with her mouth working. "Say it, Mrs. Pike." "I have been in this house since I was 14, Your Grace, and I will say it once and take what comes of it." Mrs. Pike's hands were locked in front of her. "That young woman has sat up 4 nights out of the last 14 with Miss Pippa's croup, on the floor, with a kettle, because she would not have the household woken. She teaches the second housemaid her letters on Sunday afternoons out of her own book. She has not one gown that has not been turned. And she went out of that door at 4:30 this afternoon with her head up, and thanked me for my kindness. And there is not a servant in this house who ate their supper tonight." Sebastian unfolded the paper. It was not a letter to him. It was a page in a small, upright hand, headed Tobias the long words, and it was a list, 40 or 50 words, laid out in 2 columns with a mark against each, and a note at the bottom that said, "He is not slow. He is quick, and he is frightened of being seen to be slow, which is a different thing entirely, and the person who has him next must never once let him know it has been noticed. The fox is a red dog fox with a white foot, and he lives under the 3rd tomb from the U. Please continue him. He is at night 41. Sebastian read it twice, and then a 3rd time, and set it down very carefully because his hands were not steady. He had known her 4 months. He had sat in this room 3 or 4 evenings a week while she read aloud, because his sister's children had wanted their uncle in the room, and it had become a habit, and he had told himself that the habit was for their sake. He knew that she took her tea without sugar, and that she laughed at the wrong moment in solemn books. He knew she had married a curate at 19 and buried him at 22, and that when she spoke of him, it was with a plain, unembarrassed affection that had made Sebastian, listening, ashamed of his own hollow decade. He knew the sound of her step on the flags. He had never once said any of it. He was 39 years old and the Duke of Aldworth, and he had thought there was no hurry. "Mrs. Pike," he said, "where does the carrier's cart go?" "Nether Aldworth and then Marbury, Your Grace. There is nowhere for her at Marbury. Her husband's people are in Shropshire, and they would not have her when he died." Mrs. Pike hesitated. She spoke of the almshouse at Nether Aldworth. "There is a Mrs. Sandby there, a laundress, who was good to her once." "The almshouse?" "Yes, Your Grace." Sebastian was in the stable yard in 4 minutes, and on the Nether Aldworth road in 6, with a lantern and the green ribbon in his breast pocket. At 10 minutes past 1 in the morning, riding fast down a lane he had known all his life, and had never in his life had any reason to hurry along. He would not knock up an almshouse at 1 in the morning. He sat his horse in the lane until the sky went gray, which he afterwards considered the longest 4 hours of his life, and at 6 o'clock a door opened, and a woman came out with a bucket to the pump in the yard. She was in the same gray gown, and her hair was pinned anyhow, and she had plainly not slept, and when she saw a duke on a horse at the almshouse gate at 6 in the morning, she set the bucket down slowly. "Is one of them ill?" Winifred Locksley said. "No." "Then Your Grace should not be here." She looked at the road, and at the windows behind her. "There are 11 women in this house, and they will all be at the glass in a moment, and I have nothing left but my name." Sebastian dismounted, and stood on the far side of the gate, which he judged to be as far as a man had any right to come. "Then I shall be quick and plain," he said, "and you may send me away in a minute. Mrs. Locksley, I came home at 11 last night. At 11:30 I found my sister's children sitting on the top step of the nursery stair, and Tobias held out the hairbrush to me and told me he cannot read the long words, and that you have never let anyone know it, and Pippa gave me this." He held the green ribbon over the gate. Winifred put her hand over her mouth. She said you were pinning it when my mother came. I was, her voice went. Your Grace, I have been sitting in a laundress's back room since 5 o'clock last evening thinking of nothing else. Not the character, not the money, whether anybody would keep the fox going. Night 41, Sebastian said. A red dog fox with a white foot under the third tomb from the U. I have it in writing. I have read your list 4 times. He put both hands on the top bar of the gate. Mrs. Locksley, I am going to say a great deal now, and I have not arranged any of it. My mother sent you away because the household had begun to notice how I looked at you across a book of an evening. She was right about that. She was wrong in every other particular, and I have spent the night discovering how wrong. I sent to Fenley at 1 o'clock this morning. Winifred went white. The Cloud, Sebastian said. Mrs. Cathcart's letter. I have not had an answer yet. I shall have it by Thursday, but I did not need it, and I want you to know that I did not need it. I need only ask myself which is likelier. That a woman who sits up 4 nights on a nursery floor with a kettle rather than wake a household is a person of loose character, or that she left a house in a hurry without a character because she would not be pestered in it, and had no father and no brother and no money, and therefore no way on earth to say so aloud. She had begun to shake. You cannot know that. I know it the way I know the sound of your step on the flags, but I shall have it in writing on Thursday from the man's own wife, who is my sister's friend, and has been waiting 6 years for someone to ask her a direct question. Sebastian took a breath. That is the first thing. Here is the second, and then I shall let you fetch your water. I have a house with 2 children in it who sat on a stair last night and told me they choose you, which was the plainest thing anybody has said to me in 6 years. I am asking you for a great deal more than a governess. Winifred, will you marry me? The pump dripped. Somewhere behind the almshouse, a rooster made an ill-tempered noise. You have gone mad in the night, Winifred said. Very possibly. I have £9 a year and a turned gown, and no family, and your mother will never speak to you again. She will speak to me a great deal, said Sebastian. That is not the same as being obeyed. Sebastian. It came out of her involuntarily, and she stopped, appalled at herself, and he found he had shut his eyes at the sound of it. You do not know what you are offering. Every house in the county will say a widow with no name trapped the Duke of Aldworth by way of his nursery. Then let them say it in my hearing, and I will tell them what I shall tell you now. He reached over the gate, and for the first time in 4 months took her hand. It was rough and cold from the pump, and it turned over in his and gripped. I did not fall in love with you across a book. I fell in love with you the second week, in the churchyard, when Tobias asked whether his mother could hear him, and you did not say something comfortable and false. You knelt down on the wet grass in your only gown and said you did not know, and that you thought love went on somewhere whether we could hear it or not, and that in the meantime we should say the things aloud in case. Then you took them to see the fox. I stood behind the ewe like a thief, and I have never been the same man since. Winifred Locksley began to cry, standing at the pump with her hand in his. Yes, she said. He rode back to Aldworth with her on the pillion behind him and her box sent after in a cart, and he took her in at the front door at 8 o'clock in the morning in front of every servant in the house, and Mrs. Pike, who had never in 19 years shown him anything but a smooth face, cried into her apron in the hall. The children were on the stairs. Pippa arrived at a dead run and had to be picked up by somebody, and it was Sebastian who picked her up, holding her against his shoulder while she wound both arms around Winifred's neck. And Tobias, who was 8 and grave and did not run, came down the last 3 steps and stopped and held out the hairbrush. Night 42 tonight, he said. You are behind. I am aware of it, said Winifred, and blew her nose. There was a scene in the yellow drawing room at 10. Sebastian conducted it standing, with the door open, and he said, in substance, 3 things: that Mrs. Locksley would be married to him from Aldworth Church in 5 weeks, that the dower house was in excellent order and would be aired by Michaelmas, and that his mother was welcome at his table for the rest of her life on one condition, which was that she never again dismissed a servant, a governess, or a gardener's boy from a house that was not hers. The dowager took the dower house. It took her 11 months and the arrival of the christening to bring her back through the front door, and when she came, she brought a christening cup with the Aldworth arms, and Winifred, who had a longer memory than her husband and a kinder one, met her at the step and put the baby into her arms before she had got her bonnet off. They were not friends, but they were, in the end, 2 women who sat on the same sofa and disagreed about the same books, which in that family passed for peace. Mrs. Cathcart's letter came on the Thursday. Sebastian read it once in his study, sealed it into a stiff envelope, wrote across the front the words "the truth," and put it in the strong box unopened by anyone else, because his wife had asked him not to show her a single line of it. "I have lived with it 6 years," Winifred said. "I do not need to read it. I need only to know that a man rode 11 miles at 1 in the morning and asked which was likelier." Tobias learnt the long words. He learnt them in his own time, out of his aunt's own turned-down copy with the marks against the columns, and never once in his life did anyone let him know it had been noticed. He took his degree at 24, and at the dinner afterwards he stood up and thanked the Duke and Duchess of Aldworth, and said that on a particular night in October, when he was 8 years old, he and his sister had been asked whether they got to say who was in the house, and had said yes, and had chosen right. The green ribbon lived in the Duke's breast pocket for 40 years, and was buried with him, and everyone in that family knew exactly why.